good is your pricing model? Now, you may be generating great results, but wonder if you should invest in your pricing model to continue to generate those results. Or you may have less than great results and be wondering what part of your pricing model is hurting you and how can you fix it? Or you might be looking at a competitor that continues to undercut you on some key accounts but still report great profitable results and be wondering if you're missing a trick. So for all these reasons, you might want to figure out how to quantify how good your pricing model is and how it's performing. So how do you do that? Well, fundamentally, a pricing model is really made up of three parts, right? The first part is it's a prediction of what the ultimate loss is going to be for this particular policy. Then it will load that for expenses and then profit, right? Now, the number that it's likely to get the most wrong is that first loss prediction. So that's what we want to assess when we talk about the performance of your pricing model. So we'll take that loss cost prediction from the pricing model and compare it to, frankly, your actual ultimate loss from that particular policy and see if these two numbers line up. That is an accurate model. Except we don't want to do this on a policy by policy basis, right? Because insurance is way too volatile for that to actually work. What you want to do is actually do this in broad buckets, and I'll explain how to do that. So you want to take your book of business and divide it evenly into 5 buckets. And in bucket 1, you want to put all of the policies that your pricing model predicted would have the lowest loss per exposure. So let's pretend we're auto carrier. So in bucket 1, I've got policies on average that I thought would generate $434 of loss per vehicle. Now on bucket 5, I want to put all the policies that I think will generate the highest loss per exposure. So in this example, on average, all of the policies here, my prediction is they're going to generate $1,033 per vehicle, right? So now what I want to do is line up my actual ultimate loss against these predictions and see how accurate I was. So that's the orange bar that we have here. And what I see in bucket 1 is an interesting result, right? And this is a hypothetical example, but I see that my actual loss in bucket 1 is $312, which is great on average, right? Which is great. It's better than I predicted of $434. And actually, this actually points to an area for profitable growth, bucket 1, because this bucket is going to have a terrific loss ratio, and you're going to want to find out what makes up the accounts in this bucket, what kind of accounts are here, because these are the kinds of accounts that I can price really well, I'm going to win, and are going to generate great profitable growth for my company. Now, on the flip side, bucket 5, we see a very different result. So in this case, the actual ultimate loss for these policies was actually a lot higher than we were predicting, $1,244. Now, this is also an actionable result, right? These accounts were much worse than we were expecting. This is the bucket that's going to generate your highest loss ratios. And this is a bucket to think about as you're thinking through risk selection and underwriting. So this is one result you might see as you evaluate your pricing model performance. And this result I would call underestimation, right? Another trickier thing that you might see is an example of overestimation. So we'll have a look at that next. So when you have overestimation, you see the opposite result. So you'll see in bucket 1, you actually might see higher losses than you were predicting. So in this case, it was $429 per vehicle. And in bucket 5, you see lower losses than you were expecting, $825 per vehicle in this case. And this actually is a tricky result, right? When you get, if you were to get this result for your pricing model. Because if you look at bucket 1, right, these are still, this is still the book of business and your policies that will generate the lowest loss costs, right? 529 is still the lowest number on this table for actual results. But actually, these are going to be the part of your business that has the worst loss ratios because you really didn't charge them enough. You gave them way too big a discount. On the flip side, bucket 5, these are going to be the accounts that generate the highest loss cost, but bizarrely generate the best loss ratio on of all the buckets in this graph. So that can also be tricky, right? It also points to perhaps pausing some of the actions you're currently taking. So for example, as a carrier, you might traditionally be trying to actively pursue accounts that generate a low loss cost. But you can see here that actually those accounts generate your highest loss ratio. So that might be something you should think about pausing, right? Honestly, one thing you can do if you find that this is the result that you get is consider a predictive pricing model, right? Just revisiting your whole pricing model and framework and redoing it. The rigor that goes around a predictive multivariate pricing model is probably your best shot at fixing the problems that you find in this scenario. So the third and final result you might get is if your pricing model is just right, and that is what you would expect. That means that all of these bars line up and it's perfectly accurate, right? Now, even in that scenario, there are, you generally should be happy, that's great, but there are still things to think about. And the first thing to think about is how much lift you have. And what does that mean, right? It means how different, how much, worse is your worst risks from your best risks, right? And so in this case, worst risks have an ultimate loss of 1,033 per vehicle. Our best risks have an ultimate loss of 434 per vehicle. My lift, which is the ratio of those two, is like 2.5-ish, right? Now, whether that is good enough or not is, frankly, it's very much dependent on the book of business. But honestly, rule of thumb is like a 4-ish is decent for most insurance lines, right? So, if you are getting great accuracy, I would question whether you have enough lift, because the more lift you try for, the more your accuracy suffers, and you do need to find a good balance between a lot of lift and good accuracy. Because the thing that you'd be worried about is, do your competitors have more lift than you do? So in the example I have here, let's say you have a competitor that just roll out a new model and actually they can reliably identify really great accounts that only generate $200 in ultimate loss. And if they can do that, they will obviously win that business and you will start seeing your results deteriorate. On the flip side, maybe they can identify accounts that generate 1,500 in ultimate loss, much higher than your fifth bucket. And as a result, you're going to win those accounts, but you're going to end up with some terrible loss ratios, right? So that's always the fear. And so just, again, even if you just get a just right result, that is not a reason to be complacent about pricing. So look, I hope that this was helpful for you. If you actually do want to do this, I will say that's awesome. In my experience, I don't see a lot of companies doing this, right? So even if you just do this, I think it will provide you with some great competitive advantage, which is, awesome. And if you do want to do this, we have written a very comprehensive blog article about it on our website. I'll put a link below, and you can follow that through step by step. If you do want to see more pricing videos, we'll have more to come. And if you like this, please subscribe and put a thumbs up. Thanks.